Let me show you a little bit behind the scenes. So this is my main monitor here. I'm actually playing Fallout through Steam using Steam Play, which is kind of the overarching concept that Steam has built into it, which uses this thing called Proton, which is a fork of Wine that's built into Steam. So within Steam, I have... Now this is one of the ways I have games going on. There's another one, but they kind of connect to them. So Steam Play, I have it forcing games to a specific, like, well, I can pick whatever one I want, but like Proton version, and then it quote unquote enables me to install Windows games within Steam, and then I just play it. And it asks, "Oh, are you sure you want to do that?" kind of thing. Click yes, whatever, and then boom, I got my game here. Now, not all games are as easy as Fallout 3 to get going. There are lots that are. Actually, no, hold on. Let me show you one more thing. There are lots that aren't, and then there's lots that are in between. Now, Valve is, oh my god, Valve is pouring lots of resources and has been doing so for, I think, half a decade to a decade now into gaming on Linux. So if you're ever curious as to how well a game runs on Linux, it's on Steam. Let's say you want to use Proton. What you can do is you can do protondb.com. All right. This isn't maintained by Valve. This is maintained by the community, but it ties into all the games that are on Steam. I installed Steam and found I can install Stellaris. I haven't done so yet. Well, Stellaris is native on Linux, so it's a really good, like a really good experience on Linux. So let's take a look at, say, Fallout 4, for example. All right. So there's kind of like a color rating system. I don't remember what the lowest is. It's like bronze or twig or something like that. Then silver, gold, and platinum. And each of these are people that have individually filed a report about their experience playing this game. And you'll get information like, oh, they're using this Proton version. This is the distro they're using, distribution of Linux and version. This is the kernel version, the kind of RAM they have, GPU and the driver, GPU that they have, CPU, blah, 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 descriptions with details. So you can use this to identify how playable a game is on Linux that isn't necessarily made for Linux on Steam through Proton. Not only that, if you get stuck trying to do it, usually people will post tips and tricks you got to do things and whatnot. Sometimes they're good information, sometimes they're not. Usually they're good information. So let's take an example here of something that's a little trickier. Battlefield 4. Okay, so Battlefield 4 I have running rather well. It's gold, but some people talk about some tricks here. Actually, going through Steam, actually, this one isn't all that hard, except that when you're in a game, your ping doesn't show up on the scoreboard. There is a solution to that, but I found that with the solution that I have been made aware of, I didn't come up with it, I'm using somebody else's work. I got working through Lutris, and I haven't quite figured out how to translate that for Steam. So this is one of the ways that you can play... God dang it. Play games on Linux. Yeah, let's look at Path of Exile here. I know where's some ones that are a little tricky. Okay, Space Engineers. So this one takes a bit more work to run. That's why it's silver. Now the game does run well on Linux. However, there's some tricks you got to do. I had to run. Well, there's a few different ways you can do it, but in my case, there's a Java file you can download and run and point to where it's installed through Steam, and it runs a bunch of tasks automatically for you, and then the game runs well, right? So that's one of the ways you can do that. Most of the games I run on Linux that are not native to Linux, I run through Steam, but there's another one that I kind of want to bring to your attention, and that is Lutris. So Lutris is an application which makes running it makes running a whole lot of different games really well on Linux. Not even just Windows games that are not native to Linux, but also things like consoles, like Atari, Dolphin with GameCube and Wii, DOSBox, and so much. Like, I haven't even really gone down into all of this, right? But I have every single Blizzard game playable on Linux. Now, I don't have them installed right now, but every single Blizzard game is completely playable on Linux. Fuck, let's just show you WoW right now. All right? You ready for this? You ready for this? All right. Let me log in off screen. And every single game of Blizzard has been playable on Linux for years. In fact, World of Warcraft has been playable on Linux one way or another, I think since vanilla, or it might have been TBC or something like that. It's been I wasn't actually really gaming on Linux back in vanilla, so I can't really say, but like the majority of the expansions out there, it's been playable on Linux, and Blizzard behind the scenes has actually been fixing bugs to make it playable on Linux over the years. So it's unofficial support. Overwatch runs fabulously on Linux. Hearthstone, fabulously. Warcraft 3, now the re-released one, I haven't tried myself. I've heard good things. Diablo 3 runs fabulously. Heroes of the Storm, fabulously. Starcraft 2, fabulously. I can even show you that in a second here. Starcraft, the re-release, I haven't tried, but I've heard good things. So there are private servers, but I'm talking about like playing on Blizzard WoW servers, right? There was a time where the Warden anti-cheat that's built into WoW picked up on, like, made a false positive on a ton of Linux gamers. I was one of them, and they got banned, so we had to reach out to Blizzard to say, hey, we were actually gaming on Linux, and they unbanned us. So, like, that was really cool. I think that was... I don't think that was TBC. That was 1 or 2 expansions later. So, this is a character that I don't have any of my UI set up on, but, like, look at this. I'm on an RX 580, okay? Let's take a look at the detail settings. So, I'm at 2K, alright? And I have...
For my blood to spill, yet to vanquish me, 'tis my prepare yourself.
Oh.
The bells have tolled.
Yeah, like, quite high settings, you know?
Each of you shall
I also have my FPS caps turned off.
Cry for mercy!
Yeah.
The reckoning has come!
Headless Horseman. Anyways, so that's World of Warcraft. All right. So let's show you Starcraft 2. Boop, 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 boop. Sims 4? Okay, so do you already own Sims 4 through Origin? Or are you installing from disk or ISO? Because Sims 4 runs really well on Linux. It's just depending on how you're getting it. Okay, so from Origin, you're probably going to have a very convenient experience, and I'll get into that, to how you do that in a minute here. Okay, I have personally installed and played Sims 3 and 4 on Linux from ISO, and for me the tricky part was more the installation. Once the game was up and running, it was running really great. Sims 4 actually ran way better than Sims 3, but Sims 3 ran great too. So how do I show FPS in this? Is it Control Alt R? There. Okay, so look at the top left. So the main menu is 60 FPS. Okay, so let's... I don't have any replays. Oh, I do! Let's watch this. So, because you're installing it from Origin, you're probably going to have a much more convenient time than I did. And I would expect it to be a very good experience, because the frame rates that I had with details really turned up was really good frame rate also. So this is just me testing the frame rate. Okay, so let's look at the details that we have here. Look at this. High, ultra, blah, blah, blah. Right? And I think this is also, 2K, 1440p also. So, yeah. 60 to 80 FPS kind of thing. Okay, so first of all, what graphics card are you using, NVIDIA or AMD? because I believe I had to enable a parameter. I don't remember if this is set on by default for tear free for AMD. So NVIDIA 1070, there'll be a way for you to address tearing. I don't remember what it is. You might need to go like edit a config file or something like that. But there's solutions to that. Yeah. Okay, so Lutris is an app in the context of playing Windows games on Linux. Lutris is a tool that you can use to manage wine and wine prefixes. So ultrawide, I can't really comment on that. I deal with 16:9. Some games you might have a little bit of a hiccup. Some games are just fine. Okay. So I can't really give you any useful advice on ultrawide. Sorry. Just try it. See how far you get. Now with Lutris, so Wine is a piece of software. It stands for Wine is not an emulator. Okay, I can't remember if the proper term is recursive abbreviation, but it doesn't emulate Windows. It kind of bridges Windows APIs to working in Linux in many different ways. And there's this other component that came out last year at the beginning or something like that called DXVK, which also is backed by Valve, and it translates DirectX 11 and I think 10 at this point to Vulkan. So for World of Warcraft is more of where it comes in, not so much for Starcraft, but World of Warcraft and Overwatch, it translates the DirectX 11 graphics into Vulkan, which is native in Linux, so that it can run really well. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily going to apply to Sims 4, but each of these are different prefixes with different kind of configurations and sometimes different versions of Wine and stuff like that. And so Lutris, an application you install on Linux, okay, and in similar vein but slightly different to ProtonDB, you can go take a look at games to see what your options are on Lutris. Okay, why is that not search? Okay, so Sims 4. Now, what you're going to be looking at here, they're not necessarily going to have the same ratings, but this is going to be kind of, each of these are kind of like scripts that when you hit install, it'll tell Lutris to run these scripts, so it kind of makes the process convenient for you. So let's see now. Origin version, 1.0 version, this is from DVD. SimSync launcher version, not familiar with that, but so you probably want this one. So you might need to follow this wiki to do a few steps beforehand. So this is kind of a one-time thing just to get Origin going. Now, I don't know what version of Linux you'd be wanting to go with, but for Ubuntu, you need to install a few packages. You know, only really need to do this once. So, for example, I would go... I don't know what your familiarity with Linux is, so I'm going to assume that you may not be familiar with this. So sudo apt install, and then I paste the list of stuff, okay? Okay, so sounds like you're already familiar with how to install packages if you can identify the difference between Ubuntu and Mint. Okay, so you install these packages, and then you should be able to deal with installing Origin in general. Now, I'll hit this install, okay, and then you can, when you hit, I'll just do that again. Open DXJ in the interface with Lutris, and you click install, and it'll walk you through. And then when it's done, you'll get the option to log into Origin and then install Sims 4 that way. Well, that's cool. Okay. So is what I'm saying making sense so far, or do you want me to flesh it out a bit more? Because there's a few more things I want to add before in a second, but do you want me to go back and explain any areas a bit more? Cool. Now, one of the other ways, the website is one way to look for things, but another way you can do is the search thing here, and you can also search on Lutris. So we'll do Sims 4. It's just Sims in general. And then click install, and it'll come up with the different options, and then you can just hit the Origin one. Okay? So identically, it'll take the same actions. It's just an alternate way to do it. All right? So then it'll just create a new line here, Sims 4. You click on it to launch it. It'll, in this case for you, it'll launch the Origin application, either ask you to log in, or if you've saved the login, just log in for you, blah, blah, blah. And the rest of it is effectively, and I'll link her the VOD. Cool. So at that point, Origin will behave just like normal Origin. You know, you have your menus to install games, and you click play, and it should just work. Okay. I don't own Sims 4 on Origin myself, so I can't really demonstrate that for you. But you know, so she has a GTX 1070. Is that her GPU or yours? Okay, what graphics card does she have? Gotta stretch. Oh, nice. Okay. She will not have a problem with frame rates. Okay, on my RX 580, I can turn it up, I think, to the maximum details, and I was getting like 60 to 90 FPS. I mean, it's been over a year since I played Sims 4 on my computer, but I was not hurting for frame rate. And a 1060 is double of RX 580, and a 2070 is going to be much more than that. So I would expect her to be able to turn her details all the way up and get more frames than she needs. So yeah. Oh, just doing some stretching. Oh. Actually, I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. Hello. Oh yeah, no, that I'm on a Ryzen 5 2600, so it's going to be even better. Yeah, you should be fine. You're not going to. I would expect there to be zero problems. Okay, let me just take a note here. All right, now before I jump back into Fallout 4, was there any other parts of what I just showed you that you want me to go over again or flesh out or tell you more about? Linux isn't great for multiplayer. First of all, that's an extremely broad statement. So I don't know where that comes from, but let me put this into perspective. when I was last playing Overwatch, I was playing competitively, and I had no issues as a result of gaming on Linux. So the statement of Linux isn't great for multiplayer doesn't hold water whatsoever. Okay, and even still, with so many games that you can play on Linux and you cannot play on Linux, and you have kind of mixed results with Linux, that statement really doesn't hold water in any regard. Okay, like some games, it doesn't fucking, like, it's okay. Some games, sure, okay, you can't at all, and some games we're in the middle. So how can you arrive at the statement Linux isn't great for multiplayer, right? So I really question where the person's head at that was saying that. When I'm playing WoW, I have to resub. It's a multiplayer only game. Oh, am I going to be playing single player WoW just because multiplayer sucks on Linux? No, I'm not. Right? And it's just one game. Hey, boss. Meow. No, you're not stealing that. I'm curious, where did you read that or hear about that? Oh, sorry. Hold on. I don't know if you meant to post a link, but something... No, you're not stealing that. Okay? Get down. Get down. Go on. Get down. Yeah, so I didn't actually see what you posted there. Yeah, I don't really allow links in chat for a variety of reasons, so it's nothing personal. But what was the link for? Oh, the link was to the person making the statement. Shit. Okay. I guess, what is it? Is it a website? Like a major website or what? Ten Pines Bluff. Let's go over there. Last phase of the desktop wars. Just an article about Windows trying to drop. Okay. Here, let me just see if I can pull that up, and we can actually look at that together here. Last phase of the desktop wars. Windows trying to drop out of making Windows OS and putting more resources to the Azure cash cow. So. Ibiblo. So yeah, this is a blog. So Microsoft has been putting money into Azure because Amazon makes a ton of money, and it makes a lot of sense for Microsoft to, Azure has been doing really well for quite a few years now, and it's really taking off. I don't know if it's really going to take Amazon's lunch, but it makes financial sense for them to pour more and more into it and whatnot. And Azure is a massively profitable business segment of Microsoft. They don't necessarily have to spend less on Windows, the operating system, to spend more on Azure. Now, that being said, Windows 10, in my speculation as an IT professional, very likely will be the last version of Windows, or it could be one of the last versions. I'm seeing more and more evidence of Microsoft eventually seeing that Linux is going to be the preferred operating system, because Windows 10 itself, the majority of installations, they've made $0 on. They've given it away for free to Windows 7 and Windows 8 users, whether you have a legal license or not, because they've given it away legally to people who pirated versions of Windows 7 and 8, right? And it has built-in ads. Sure, you can go buy it on the store shelves and things like that. Like they are making some money off of it, but it's nowhere near the same revenue stream as Windows 7 and 8. They never gave free upgrades to Windows 8 from Windows 7 for all 7 users. So Windows 7 users, there was a few tricks, but it's not like it is with Windows 10. And while the market share for Windows 10 is still larger than Linux for the desktop segment in a lot of regards, the reality is that the writing on the wall is that people are getting more and more fed up with Windows. But let's take a look at this article. The 2 most intriguing developments in the recent Windows system for Linux. Okay, porting Edge to Ubuntu is fucking peanuts. You know what's more important than Edge on Linux? Microsoft SQL database on Linux and VS Code on Linux, okay? Microsoft SQL on Ubuntu. Microsoft released their SQL database for Linux a bunch of years ago. All versions of it officially supported. You can install it. Like, look at this. Microsoft.com, install SQL Server and create a database on Ubuntu. Right? And let's see now. Let's look at when this happened, because I don't remember. It was a whole bunch of years ago. Dun, 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 dun. I think it might have been before 2017, but hey, we at least have a 2017 article. Wait, they're streaming what? Okay. Back in 2016, when Microsoft announced the SQL Server would soon run on Linux. 2016. I mean, I don't know what month that is, but that's about 4 years from now, right? So you could literally move all of SQL databases from Windows Server to Linux and cut your operating costs substantially. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, VS Code. Visual Studio Code. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Visual Studio is a Microsoft suite, okay? And this is on Linux native, right? Okay, right now. And not only that, GitHub, VS Code. It's open source. Microsoft, like, look at this. The repository is Microsoft VS Code, okay? The license is MIT. Now, if you may not be familiar with that, this is the most unrestricted license that I know of. And I can take this code, I can fork it, and I don't have to give credit. I can actually, in some regards, claim it as my own. Okay, this is the same code for Windows, for Linux, probably even Mac OS, and it's open source. You know, this is a core piece of software that they've open sourced, and the majority of the software Microsoft has ever put out, like 99% of it, has been completely closed source. So when I hear, you know, Microsoft Edge, like the 2 most intriguing developments in the recent evolution is Microsoft Edge coming to Ubuntu. Edge is bullshit. Edge is just Microsoft forking Chrome. And while that's a good thing on Windows, nobody's going to give a shit about that on Linux. Okay, so WSL. I haven't actually tried the Windows system for Linux. Modify Linux binaries to run under Windows 10. Okay. Are now landing features in Linux kernel. Okay, so Microsoft has actually been contributing code to the Linux kernel for, I think, 7 or 8 years. Microsoft Hyper-V improvements Linux kernel. I'm trying to see how far back it is. But Microsoft, many years ago, has started contributing to the Linux kernel, firstly, so that Linux systems can run better on Hyper-V, and Windows systems can run better on Linux hypervisors. So, you know, Microsoft contributing to the Linux kernel project is nothing new. In fact, they're doing more and more, and they are a significant contributor. So is this the article where they talk about multiplayer? Or is that a different one? Is this the right blog, by the way, that you were talking about? This is a sidetrack. Shit. Okay. It's the right blog. Okay, so where's the one that talked about multiplayer? Been learning a lot from Lawrence Systems on YouTube. I'm not familiar with Lawrence Systems. I suppose. I just want to see where this multiplayer thing comes from because it makes me chuckle. Keep going, Puss. Go on, go on. Go on. Move along, Puss. Keep going. Go on. Knocking shit all over the place. Wasabies, where is that multiplayer thing you were talking about? I would like to see it. I know that you can't link it, but like, hopefully you can guide me to it. It was Reddit. Oh, okay. Well, no worries, no worries. It's okay. So anyways, let's get back to the gaming. But yeah, generally, I really haven't seen any multiplayer-centric issues with Linux. It's generally like, oh, is this game playable on Linux or not? Blah, blah, blah. Kind of thing. Oh, apparently we do not have enough